Hello and welcome back to Remake Hot Take, the podcast where we play studio executives pitching remake ideas of our favorite and new media. I'm Brooke Rees, and this week I am joined by friend of the pod, Megan Duke. She has been on before just for one episode. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just for one episode. Last year for our Talk to Me episode. She is a Halloween horror movie fan, so I thought we'd bring her back on for the month of October. We're going to have a couple of horror movies, and next up on the pod is going to be Beetlejuice. So Megan joined us for our horror movie episode, and this week we are doing a new release, just came out like 3 days ago on HBO Max. It is called Salem's Lot, which is based on, I think, the 1975 Stephen King novel, which apparently was like one of his first novels. I think it was just his second one. And I guess there was like a 2004 movie as well. So this is kind of like, I feel like Hollywood's doing all sorts of remakes. So This is just the latest iteration of doing a 2024 update. This one, obviously, a Max instead of HBO Max, a Max original. So yeah, Megan, thank you for joining us today. Was there anything else you wanted to add to your intro?
Absolutely not.
Horror movie enthusiast. She's my former med school roommate, now resident physician next door neighbor.
So it's becoming a progressively longer title.
Yeah. MD at the end of it as well. We often watch horror movies together because it's like one of your favorite genres, but we just watched this like last night. So what were your overall thoughts and opinions on Salem's Lot? Did you like it? Did you dislike it?
I mean, I haven't read this book. I was really excited because it was Stephen King, and a lot of my favorite horror movies are, based on Stephen King novels. So I have to say my overall impression was kind of one of disappointment.
Yeah.
I just didn't love it.
Yeah, I don't know. It felt like, I don't know. So like we were going through the list here of, I've never read a Stephen King novel. Have you read any of them? Yeah, I haven't read any of them, but we were going through the list here of like his more recent novels that were adapted into movies. So like everyone knows The Shining, but then recent ones that we've seen are like It and It Chapter 2, which we both love those. Those are like really good ones. And I feel like Shining and It, Pet Sematary all have like a very different like true horror tone. This almost felt like, and I don't know if it was intending to be like this, but it almost felt like more like little kid horror. Like
I feel like it was geared to a different audience, a younger one.
Maybe like more like Goosebumps-y. And like we watched, I don't think we finished it, but we started last year, the Goosebumps, like, what was it, on Hulu or something? No, Disney Plus. I think they had like a revival of that series as well. And it almost had that kind of like everyone dies. Like I'm not invested in the characters at all. So yeah, going from like something like It and It Chapter 2, which like terrified me in the movie theater. Like we watched this, I think it was direct to streaming, since it was a Max original, obviously. And I don't know, it just didn't have that like same horror quality. But yeah, like what are you looking for in a horror movie? And like, how did this like not really live up to those expectations?
I mean, I feel like my expectations are pretty broad in a horror movie. I like some of the like cheesy, not so like horror, but just more spooky movies. That's fine. It doesn't have to necessarily scare me. But I really like the ones that flesh out the plot, and I feel like this one did not. I kind of like felt like I didn't know what the plot was at the very beginning.
Yeah, well, I think like it's like one of those cases where you like love a good trailer. I never watch like movie trailers when I'm on my own. I'm always going off of like just the descriptions. But Max like always has trailers on there for their horror movies, so we watched the trailer. And I feel like part of our disappointment was like we watched the trailer and I thought it was gonna be like a
paranormal.
Yeah, I thought it was because like so we've talked about this before. I think we talked about it on the pod last year too. But like Megan and I have like different like stratas for like the different kind of genres of horror. And up there for the top for you is like religious, paranormal, like horror. So you love like exorcisms and demons. And, like, if the Catholic Church is involved, Megan loves it. Like, if there's a priest in there that needs to be, like, you're not even a particularly religious person yourself, but, like, I feel like those are always, like, pretty solid movies. Like, exorcisms or, like, something where the main character, like, you're really rooting for them. They're, like, a priest that's, like, lost their faith and, like, has to, like, come back to the church. So, like, I thought it was gonna be, like an exorcism or a house haunting movie. And I'm pretty sure, like, the word vampire was not mentioned, like, at all in the trailer. And then it just turned into this, like, almost, like, with the, like, it was, like, Barlow and Straker or whatever. It almost felt like kind of, like, a parody of, like, like, you said Dracula. I've never read Dracula.
Like, Dracula and His Servant. I like a creature feature, and I feel like Dracula, vampires, it's like one of my favorites. It was set up to be successful. It just like didn't hit it for me.
Yeah. And like we always talk about our you know, favorite genres. I don't think that like, I guess vampire would be classified as creature feature, but I like feel like I almost distinguish it. Like I distinguish like zombie from creature. It's like vampire and zombie. And I don't know that I've ever seen a true like vampire horror. I think they're coming out with this year like a Dracula one or like I've seen like Nosferatu, which is like do you know about Nosferatu? It's like the original horror movie and it's about a vampire, but it has like some weird like connotations about like Jewish people being like rats. Like we studied it in film school. And Nosferatu is like if you ever watch SpongeBob and it's like the hash-slinging slasher episode, the like figure that comes up is Nosferatu at the end, and he goes Nosferatu. So like that's the only other like vampire movie that I've seen that's trying to be like a horror movie, because I've seen like you know, the Twilight series, but that's like we want to fuck the vampire kind of movie, not like we're scared of him. So yeah, I guess I haven't seen a lot of them, but the tone felt like so I don't know, almost like it was trying to parody like some sort of like Dracula, but it did it in like a much less serious way. But yeah, we have like the Barlow and Straker, and then Straker ends up being like his servant, but then like dies immediately. I don't know. I think that like a lot of it too is like the characters, like I can't even remember their names. Like they weren't like memorable. Like
they didn't make an impression.
No, like the second that we had, like it almost had like a Stranger Things vibe at the beginning, where it's like we're in the like 70s. I think it was supposed to be like 70s or like early 80s or something. And it was like we have these like the group of 3 little misfit kids that get bullied in the parking lot, and then I was like, oh, they're going to be our main characters. Like, we're going to love them. And then, like, 2 of them die, like, within the first, like, 15 minutes. And I was like, oh, like, I feel like anytime, like, a movie, like, starts killing people off and their deaths are, like, final, like, they're not coming back, I'm like, oh, okay, like, this is going to be more of, like, a slasher kind of thing than, like, we're, like, super emotionally invested and, like, we're worried for the characters. Like I never really felt that sense of like scared for the other characters. It was just like, oh, everyone's gonna die now. Like everyone is dead in the whole town. So I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, the start of the movie with the kids and the bullying situation, I just started kind of liking that group of boys and that friendship, and then that went away and I didn't really have kind of a liking to any of the other characters quite as much. But I also felt like, you know, the trailer definitely was misleading. And then the movie starts talking about this satanic ritual that happened so however many years ago. And I thought we would maybe get some backstory into that, and we never did. And then the main character shows up. I can't even remember his name. What is it?
Ben.
Ben.
The writer,
And he's talking about how he's researching his, like, life story.
Yeah.
And then never mentioned ever again. And I was, like, disappointed because I wanted to learn more about these characters, and it felt like we just knew them very superficially.
And, like, I feel like the writer trope is actually kind of, like, a common one for horror movies. Like, I feel like often there's, like, a novelist that's, like, the main character. Like, there's Sinister, and then, like, Haunting of Hill House, like, he's a writer. Like, I feel like I've seen multiple horror movies where, like, the main character is a novelist. But I don't know, like, they were like, oh, he has this tragic backstory, and it was just that, like, his parents, like, died in a car crash. But, like, I thought it would have been better if, like, his backstory was that, like, his parents died, but also he like witnessed something when he was young. Like
that's what I thought it was gonna be.
It like and led up to
it
that.
Even alluded.
Yeah,
he was like, I felt like when I left, I was actually running away from something, and I was like, ooh, what does that mean? Mm-hmm. And then we got nothing else from that.
And he's like sitting outside like of the like in his car outside of the mansion, and he's like staring at it, and he's like, yeah, there have been rumors about this place for years, but it made it seem like Barlow and Straker had like recently moved into the house. So like what had happened before it, because he's reading all these articles about people who had been murdered in the house, but we like never went into that backstory. Like I'm thinking about it now, I'm like, he does all of this research about the house, but it seems like the vampire just recently moved in. So is he like recently moving back in? Did the vampire have like a summer house in Europe and like is recently like relocating back? Like it had all of this like kind of build up to like, oh, something sinister is in the house itself, but then like the house itself was not haunted. It was just like this creepy fucking looking vampire that like lived in the basement. So I don't know, it had like all of this potential, and then it kind of like became like campy a little bit. Like people were, and like maybe that's the vibe that they wanted to go for, but like I think they need to talk to the people that make the trailer, because it was a serious trailer movie mismatch there.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure the book goes into way more context. I mean, that's always the issue, is like you don't have enough time to go into everything with the films.
Yeah.
But it felt very rushed, even with, I don't remember anyone's name, but the teacher who is like, this is vampirism.
Yeah.
And he suddenly has all this knowledge about vampirism, and it's like, how did we derive that?
Mm-hmm. Well, he like brought up like a couple books. I actually like that part, because it was like the teacher got like books from the library, which I guess is like so vampire, like I guess vampires are so in the lore that like I'm thinking about the Twilight scene when Bella is like Googling like vampire. It's like they always do research, but I did actually like that scene where the teacher was like looking at all of these like textbooks and like vampire lore books, and the kid his like reference material was comic books. I thought that was kind of cute. Mark, like the main kid character.
Yeah, I thought that was cute.
That was like my match.
That was my favorite. Character, I think.
Yeah, I don't even like Ben that much, and he was supposed to be like the main character, but I liked Mark, who is a little kid, and I liked the teacher a lot. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you want to jump into the characters too, I thought that like Susie or whatever, like the relationship between her and Ben, I was like, I don't care about them at all. Like he's been here like 2 weeks. I'm like, this is not like a lasting like loving relationship. So like when he like Susan is like thrashing around in the church, like she's already a vampire, and he's like, no, I must save her, and he like runs out, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, you are so fucking stupid. But yeah, the two little kids that get killed off right away, and then it's just like a slow trickle into you like slowly realizing that the entire town has been like turned into vampires, and you're like, oh, we're gonna lose everyone. But I thought that like the teacher's death was like a bit unnecessary and sad. Like he follows him into the house. Like, what did you think was gonna happen? Like Megan and I talked about this, that like the majority of the adults were like incompetent in this movie. Like particularly, like one of our favorite parts is when they like were like, okay, well, we're gonna take a look at like Mrs. Glick, and if she like reanimates, then we'll know for sure that it's a vampire, instead of going up and exhuming like her dead son's body. And they were like, okay, well, we'll be in the morgue once like nighttime hits. We'll see what happens. And they go in there like knowing that the teacher has just been attacked by a vampire, and that the cross was like an invaluable weapon against them. And they brought nothing. They were like shocked.
Actually, like wild. She brought a vial of rabies vaccine. I don't know why she's carrying that around. It makes absolutely no sense. But
which,
they didn't bring
as someone that has needed the rabies vaccine.
Oh yeah, I mean that thing. First of all, it's very expensive.
Tell that story, Megan.
Well, I've had to be vaccinated before because I caught a bat in my mother's house, like an idiot. And
yeah, PSA: don't touch a bat.
Don't do it.
especially without like heavy layering of protective gloves and stuff, because they like bite and you can't even feel it.
Apparently, I called the state public health department, and they said most people don't even realize they've been bitten because their teeth are so small. Mm-hmm. So I had to go get the vaccination series. I think it's 4 unless you're immunocompromised, and it's 5.
And it was like really expensive, and like
it was like $1,600 a shot. Insurance covered most of it. Don't let that deter you from getting your rabies vaccine if you need it. But it was 4 shots. I had to go to the emergency department for every single one. That's like the only place you can get it. Mm-hmm. I called around to every
maybe that's the only
travel
place,
vaccine
like,
clinic.
This one doctor had fucking hoarded
but, like,
them in her
it's
purse.
Not refrigerated. She's carrying this expensive thing around, and it made no sense. It also made no sense why it was effective, to be honest. It's not like she got bit by a rabid animal. She got bit by a vampire.
Yeah, I guess it is equating like that vampirism is just kind of like a strain of rabies. Like, I don't know. But yeah, there were some, Megan does genuinely get upset when there's like medical misinformation in film. So do you want to talk about this like quack doctor character that they had? So she's carrying around rabies, and what else did she do? That was like so stupid.
I think it's just a pet peeve of mine because it feels, well, first of all, I think a lot of people work in healthcare, and it's not enjoyable when people just make stuff up and spew medical terminology to sound like they know what they're doing. It just feels like very lazy.
Yeah, because you have like consultants for like so many other things that you can hire. And it feels like for some reason for the medical stuff, like it's never accurate. I don't know why. Like they must have someone in healthcare that they could like spend $2,000 to have as like a consultant on these movies.
Yeah. It just feels very lazy. And I think to some degree it's harmful to have medical misinformation out. I mean, with this movie, there's nothing like in particular, but you know, other shows you'll see people giving CPR incorrectly and that sort of thing. And I think if you have like a wide audience, you should do your part in portraying that correctly.
Yeah.
But in this film, it's just things that made no sense. I mean, she said this like little kid had like an acute pernicious anemia, which is generally we see that with people who have like autoimmune gastritis or something along those lines, which tend to be older people. Tends to not be so severe you need a blood transfusion. It just makes no sense for this kid's presentation. She could have just kept it at anemia. She didn't have to say pernicious anemia, which is so annoying. It just, I don't know. That's the whole thing where they just throw medical terminology around just to sound like they know what they're talking about. And it's just a little bit of a peeve of mine. And I know like most people who work in healthcare feel similarly.
Yeah. I feel like there are TikToks of people that like are medical, like either in medical school or are doctors, and they like watch episodes of Grey's Anatomy and they're just like flustered by the end of it. But like you said, I feel like obviously I think people are being like hyperbolic when they say this, but they jokingly say like, oh yeah, I've watched all like, 45 seasons of Grey's Anatomy. They're like, I could do like anything that they do. And it's like, please do not. Please do not do anything that you have seen on Grey's Anatomy. But it's funny because this film is kind of perfect for you because you're literally allergic to the sunlight. So you could possibly be a vampire. And you also have like a blood anemic kind of disorder, right? Yeah.
So I know you like to dress up for these things. And I was thinking, I have no idea what to wear. Yeah. But I feel like just myself as it already is.
Come as you are.
Come as you are. I have a photosensitivity disorder. My immune system attacks my blood. So I am kind of a modern
You're basically a vampire.
Yeah.
No, that's crazy. I'm perfectly healthy. Okay, what else do we want to talk about? Oh, wait, okay. So we're talking about how they were like so incompetent and they went into this like morgue area and she has rabies shots just rolling around in her purse for no reason. I feel like
no cross.
The no cross thing. Like they literally which also this movie was interesting because it like showed the cross as being like extra uber powerful. And like I said, I haven't seen like a lot of vampire films, but I feel like I've seen like a bazillion demon films with you though, and I feel like they always like use the cross, but it has like limited power. Like if at all. Like I feel like the demon is usually like they're like they're like, you think you can use that against me? Like the cross never fucking works. But for this one, I was like, hell yeah. I was like, Jesus, bring the heat. Like the cross, like they have which kind of like makes me think that they're leaning into this kind of campy thing, is that they used like pretty almost like outdated, kind of that old Goosebumps kind of vibe CGI. So they have like the glowing eyes, and they do this like weird outdated CGI where they have the crosses like glowing. So the crosses were like uber powerful though. So I was like, perfect. This is like such an easy weapon. I'd be like cross earrings, cross neck, like I'd be decked out. And so they
eating
go
all the garlic.
Yeah, I would like become Italian. I would have like garlic bread, like crosses. I would become a Catholic Italian immediately, and they don't do any of that. And they like purposefully are going to the morgue, and it's like to check the situation out. But they have a lot of evidence already that like they're going to see someone reanimate. And
certainly 2 of them knew they would.
Yeah.
They were trying to convince the physician.
Yeah.
But they knew, and they came with nothing. At least she had her rabies vaccine that miraculously worked.
So she has her rabies vaccine, and then like this was funny though. They were like, and this is what makes me think that they were trying intentionally to be campy, is that they're like, oh no, we don't have anything, and she's like, look at my purse, I have a tongue depressor, and I was like, this woman has it all. You know, she has the rabies shot, she has some tongue depressors in there. And so then they're trying to like make a cross out of a tongue depressor and some tape. But man, it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, you want us to follow along with the logic of your film, and even if you're trying to be like campy, this is such like an obvious, like obviously stupid thing for them to do. But yeah, I was like, and like, does the cross have to be wooden, or could you make it out of like any 2 items that crossed?
I think I assumed it was any 2. They had a metal one at some point.
Yeah, so could they just not have like done this? And then like the Holy Spirit like went in. But yeah, I thought that was like, it was like a funny moment because of how silly goofy it was. But then it's like we administer the rabies shot and we save the doctor. And then the doctor just gets like blasted to bits at the end. That was like the one kill that I like was actually like surprised by, other than like I think the first little kid, what's his name, Ralph or something? The first little kid that gets like eaten and we see like off camera like blood exploding. I was like, oh, okay, we're killing already. That one took me by surprise. And then like her death at the end feels like so unnecessary. Like she just gets like shotgunned down by Susan's mom, who's like the new vampire servant or whatever. And she was like such a main character, and we kind of just like leave her there in the dirt. So I don't know. I thought that was like an interesting way to end things. And then again, like we have Mark as the main character, little kid, and he like knows what's gonna happen, and he doesn't try that hard to stop his parents from like going to the door. Like I feel like they had.
I would have been sobbing, being like,
yeah,
no,
please. If my dad like got up to answer the door for someone who surely was a vampire, I'd be like blocking his path, and Mark's just like,
I'd be screaming.
Mark's like, you've got to make your own decisions, Dad. And I was like, he does not like his parents low key, but yeah, it was kind of like an unserious movie in that like literally everyone dies except for the main character and then Mark, and then also. They like drive off into the sunset, and I'm like, I think we need to call like children and family service. Like Mark surely has next of kin that's not just Ben, the random novelist. I was like, is Ben like, you know, is it this moment where like he himself lost his parents and then, you know, he's coming back and now he's adopted this child? Like, do you think he was just trying to drive him like out of immediate danger, and then like next of kin will be contacted? Or do you think the implication was like, oh, well, he's adopted this child now?
I didn't think he adopted it.
Okay. You think like someone is contacted once they're out of like immediate danger? So. I don't know. This was like the 70s. I think you could just take a kid. It could just be yours. So, I don't know. What else? Oh, like you were saying at the beginning, like they make up, what was his name? Straker? Mm-hmm. Barlow and Straker. And they have like, what, like an antique store in town? Mm-hmm. Like they have some sort of like antique.
It's his front.
Yeah, like basically he's like the mob and he has like a yogurt shop that he like gets like all his income from. But like where was he from? Like what was this story? Like
I think
where
they were from England.
Yeah,
or something.
But like were they coming to him? Like what was so appealing about like this town? Like I
think
just
they were
wanted more.
insinuating like it had something to do, well, the house at least, with whatever had happened previously. But they did get into that at the end where they were like, this town is already dead.
Yeah,
and I'm like, but
that
what?
Mean?
We got no backstory on this town.
Yeah. Like what? Oh, apparently in Stephen King's novels, he starts it out with Jerusalem's Lot. Maybe this is what they're alluding to. Maybe they're going to make sequels because I was reading like just the Wikipedia page. So Salem's Lot was like, I think only his second novel published in like the 70s or something. And then he kind of sets up the story of like the town, and then apparently they revisit the town in multiple other novels. So maybe that's kind of what it is, and maybe they're planning on also having
that's
sequels.
The context that like we wanted.
Yeah, and that
I'm sure this would be a very different experience if we had read the book.
Yeah, I'm sure, but maybe if we view this as like this is excellent exposition for like further novels where they come back, or for their like movies where they come back to the town. Because we know that like truly now it is a dead town, like literally everyone has died. But yeah, I didn't know what they meant by saying like this town is already dead. I was like the commerce, like what do you like what makes a town dead? Like there's like a mist of death around it. Like I wasn't quite sure what that means, but yeah, I guess maybe like I didn't like hear them like talk about the house itself, but I guess that makes sense if like murders had already been committed there and there was something like haunted about the house just from like its past that a vampire would like to live there. I don't know. So yeah, have you read Dracula? Mm-hmm. What's Dracula all about? Does it like steal from the lore?
I've read from it, but Dracula steal from the lore, or this movie steal from?
This movie steal from Dracula.
I mean, loosely. I think, Dracula has his servant, but it's also kind of a different plot line. He's going after his wife. It's more of...
Dracula has a wife?
He wants one.
Okay.
It's a long story. I think
so. He's like a bachelor out on the town.
Yeah. I think there are different interpretations of vampires. Mm-hmm. This hits some aspects of Dracula, not all of them. Mm-hmm. I mean, because like Dracula like can present as like just a person, like kind of masquerade as a normal human in appearance. Obviously, this vampire,
he's not looking too good. He's not winning any seasons of The Bachelor if he's trying to find a wife. Maybe that's like where all the pent up like anger comes from. He's just really lonely. Maybe like maybe Straker is like his wingman, like out there trying to get the chicks for him. But so
maybe that's his next.
That's the next. Well, he's dead now, apparently.
So they say.
So maybe he has a reboot. But so are vampires just like I feel like you know more about this stuff than me. Like I feel like my knowledge of like the mystical is literally from like Vampire Diaries, and before that it was from like Twilight. So
I don't know how much more I know from you than you, considering like mine is mostly from films.
But like we were watching like a Discovery of Witches, and they said like a grimoire, and I was like, oh my god! I was like, that's from Vampire Diaries, and then you were like, no. You're like, that's a thing. That's just like in the lexicon, and I was like, oh, so like. Did Dracula create the myth of the book Dracula? Did that create the myth of a vampire, or is the myth of a vampire something that has gone back like centuries?
I have no idea.
Well, I think the textbooks,
not the first.
Yeah, I feel like the textbooks kind of the textbooks that our teacher friend was reading kind of lead me to the fact that vampires are some sort of like mystical thing that have cropped up across like dozens of cultures and hundreds of centuries. And I feel like maybe Dracula is like our modern day interpretation of vampire, and kind of what everything like modern day has drawn off of. But if you know in the comments, feel free to tell us if anyone is really up on their vampire lore. But yeah, I guess we can get into then. Was there anything else specific to this movie that you wanted to talk about?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, I think that's a good transition then into talking about some of our other favorite vampire shows or movies. So, like I said, I haven't seen many other movies. The only other movie I have seen is Twilight that's vampire focused. And then I watched one with Michaela last year that was actually really good. It was, what was it? It was like something with vampire, and I think he wanted to find a wife or something. And there was also a werewolf.
Did I watch it?
No, I watched it with Michaela. No, but I think you'd seen it. No, maybe you hadn't seen it. And Michaela was shocked that you hadn't seen it.
Oh, Van Helsing?
Yeah.
I've always meant to see it. It's something that, it's one of those movies where I know I'm really going to like it. And I want to save it for a special occasion. But I feel like my life is too busy. I never have a special enough occasion where I'm just like kind of by
Halloween?
myself. Maybe.
I'm not allowed to be there for this viewing. You want to see this on your own?
I mean, I'd see it with you.
It's good. So like that's another movie that I've seen, but that one I think is like werewolves and vampires, and I'm pretty sure the whole plot is just like he really wants to have kids. Like he desperately wants to have kids, but his like vampire wives like can't reproduce, so he's like trying to find someone else. But that one was good. But then we've seen a bunch of vampire TV shows together. So Vampire Diaries, Discovery of Witches, which we just started, and What We Do in the Shadows. Have you seen any other vampire driven movies or TV shows?
Oh, I'm sure. Penny Dreadful, it's not like all vampire based. It's kind of a mix of different fairy tales. That's one of my favorite shows.
Yeah, you love that one. Vampire Diaries, seasons like 1 through 3, amazing.
Yeah.
Like I was like, give them Emmys. I was like, this is the best writing that has ever happened. And then I don't know what happened, but like season 4, fine. Season 5, okay. And then what are we on now? Season 6? Oh my God, something happened. Like absolutely the person that was writing for seasons 1 through 3, they were fired for sure. Like there's no way that the same person is writing for season 6 that wrote seasons 1 through 3. Because like more happened in season 1 of Vampire Diaries than happens in like any other TV show. And now all that has happened in season 6, the few episodes that we have like gun to our head, forced ourselves to watch, all that's happened is like Elena is like committing like medical like HIPAA violations and like she has like a stupid boyfriend. Like it is the worst plot. But everyone says like I think
Elena makes a lot of like decisions that make it hard to like her.
Yeah.
Which is bad because she's the main character.
She's the main character. But then I think they boot her out, right? For season 7 and 8.
Well,
I think
she
Nina
chose to
Dobrev.
leave,
Yeah, because she's on a stinking pile of
She
scripts.
was like, oh, you're kidding me.
Yeah, because Nina Dobrev actually, like, I think she's, like, a fantastic actress. Like, everyone says it. They were working her like a fucking dog in Vampire Diaries.
The different characters she plays, it's incredible.
It's incredible, like...
that she looks exactly the same, but you can tell that's Catherine.
Yeah, and that's like, Elena. and it's like even more impressive when it's like you can tell like that's Catherine pretending to be Elena.
Yeah.
Like she's so good at it, and it's like her and like because I feel like what's his name Paul Wesley? Paul Wesley, yeah. Paul Wesley
is his character's name is?
As Stefan. I feel like Stefan, because they had him play some doppelgangers, he's not as good. He's not as good. He has like slight variation and it's like, okay, I can get it, but it's just not as good as Nina Dobrev. So, and like, let me give a plug to anyone that has not seen Vampire Diaries seasons 1 through 3. I feel like you just gotta cut it off. Like, just end it at like season 5 and then just don't listen to anything else.
I will say, I mean, I've watched past.
Yeah.
I've watched up through season 6, maybe a little bit into season 7. And there are good plot points.
Yeah.
You just have to get through some slow, kind of painful parts to get to them. It's not like as like every episode you like can't wait for the next one type of thing. It's kind of like
that's what it was. Like season 1, like it was so good at like just every single episode was like, oh my god, like so many twists and turns, and like, you know, very like I don't know, it just feels like the later seasons are just like more like soap opera-y of like, oh, we like took all this time to like establish great characters, now we're just gonna have like a will they won't they, like you can only do a will they won't they like so many times, and now it's just like annoying. So
it becomes like a bit of a like we've been here before.
Yeah. But I loved the first couple seasons of Vampire Diaries. Twilight, our mutual friend Michaela loves Twilight so much. She wants to do like her bachelorette like a Forks, like a Washington tour. I like Twilight, but I really loved the books. I was like obsessed with the books when I was like 12 and like read all of them. Watching the movies back, I'm like, those were not as good as I remember them being.
They were great when I was a kid.
Yeah, they were really good when I was a kid, but now I'm like, oh man. Especially the later ones. I feel like the first one is still good, but like after the first one, I'm like, oh. But yeah, and then we just started A Discovery of Witches, which is very good. And I want to watch more of it.
You should. After this,
we're going to immediately finish and watch A Discovery of Witches. But that one's really good too. I feel like it's a good kind of retelling again of this like vampires, witches kind of like storyline. And I apologize to whoever plays the main vampire character guy, because I was like, he's not hot. And then he got hot real quick.
It's his character.
Yeah, it's his aura. Like I'm very much discovering that like it kind of doesn't matter what a man looks like. It's just like how they walk and how they talk. And I'm like, oh yeah. I'm like, never mind. I'm in. But yeah, and then more within the last couple of years too, I love What We Do in the Shadows so much. Like it is just so funny. And I feel like similar thing, like their first couple of seasons were really good. I feel like their later ones are still good, just like not as funny as the original couple seasons. I was like dying laughing with those, and now I'm like laughing occasionally. But What We Do in the Shadows is just like adorable, and that's how I hope that vampires are. Like if I had to be a vampire, I hope like that's what my life is just like chilling out with a couple friends in a house for a couple centuries and like getting up to shenanigans. Like they're like such a well written, like a character driven show. Like just like, you know, their characters like so intimately, and the actors are like excellent on that. It makes me like where are they, Staten Island? Yeah, it makes me like I want to like go to Staten Island and like see what it's all about.
It's a show I watch when I just want to like watch something enjoyable that I know I don't want to have like time looking for something that I think I might like. Yeah, I'm just gonna go to this.
Yeah, you know that you're gonna like it. And it's like I feel like we don't have a lot of like 20-minute shows that we watch, so like it's a really good 20-minute one when we like don't have a lot of time. All right, well, let's finish up real quick talking about, we mentioned like a couple other Stephen King iterations. Do you have a favorite Stephen King movie that you've seen?
I feel like, oh my god, how can I choose? Probably It. And I normally like the originals more than I like the remakes, but I actually really like the remake more than the original in this case. It is really well done. I really enjoyed watching it.
I haven't seen the original It at all. And like I haven't seen the original Salem's Lot from 2004. I'm sure there was maybe one in like the 70s too. But yeah, I've never seen the original It, but that what's that? He's like what's the guy, the Skarsgård guy? He's really creepy, man. Yeah, Bill. They're like, there's like a whole Skarsgård empire of actors.
He's amazing. And the kids are great actors too.
Yeah, they are. The kids are great. I didn't like the second one as much because it was like all the adults. I still thought it was funny, but I feel like we were in for a bit there in like the 2010s was like the heyday of like little kids in like the 70s and 80s in movies.
You had, like, Stranger Things.
Yeah, and like horror, like Stranger Things and It, and I feel like there was a couple more too. But I feel like it was really like fun for those actors to play those roles, and it was almost like, I don't know, this is like stupid. It was like kids without iPhones. Like, what are they gonna do? They're gonna discover demonic presences in their small town America. But yeah, I really like it too. I saw it in theaters and I was like absolutely terrified to see it in theaters. I was like, I don't want to see this at all. Which is usually like the mark of a good horror movie. Apparently like Stephen King also like wrote the story or something for Shawshank Redemption.
Really?
Which is timely because we just went to the prison. The prison that Shawshank Redemption was filmed at is called the like Ohio State Reformatory, and it's in Ohio, obviously. And
No.
The Ohio State Reformatory located in Maine, but it is in Ohio, just an hour and a half from us. And we were trying to go to the Renaissance Festival for my birthday, but we were like an hour and a half into like a 3-hour drive when I like looked at my phone and they were like Renaissance Festival closed today because they had like power outage issues. So we like,
which for context, the day before we knew they were going to be hit by a hurricane, we were like, we're still going to the Renaissance Fair.
For even deeper context, like they were getting like just some of the outskirts stuff of Hurricane Helene, so they weren't like uber impacted, but they were having like high winds and rain and stuff like that. And
but we were gonna brave it.
Yeah, we were gonna brave it, and like
it's still gonna be a good time.
We looked at the website and they said like we'll be here rain or shine. Yes. You know, like we weren't hit. They said
we'll be here. It's better to come on a rainy day.
Yeah, there were like less lines, and we were like, okay. And then we checked it again at like 8 a.m. I think the Renaissance Fair like opened at 8 or something. We checked their Facebook then, and they said like we're good to, like they didn't say anything else. They just had the post up, and I was like, okay, we're good to go. And then we got into our drive, but then I like looked and they unfortunately like had lost power, so they couldn't operate like any of the like food and everything. So we had to like quickly take the next exit, and we pulled into like a church parking lot. There were like about 100 churches that we could have chosen from within like a 2-mile drive off the highway, but we pulled into like a Baptist church parking lot and just like Googled like what is there to do in the place that we were at, and there happened to be the Ohio State Reformatory, so we went there. And Shawshank Redemption's a great movie. Like it's a tearjerker too, and like coincidentally, Megan and I have sometimes some odd conversation topics, but that happens when you're friends for so many years. Eventually you're going to talk about prison reform. And that was our drive. Yeah, very coincidentally we had been talking about that for like the hour and a half as we were getting over to the Renaissance Festival, and then like we ended up touring a prison for the whole afternoon. So that was really interesting. Apparently the prison's like super haunted. I think there's like a horrible fire there and like overcrowding issues, so maybe like that's part of the hauntings. He didn't say if there's any other reason, but I don't know. We should look into. I'm sure there's a Ghost Hunters episode on it. Yeah, something. Because they literally like posted signs that were like, if you're here for a walking day tour, like you cannot disrupt the flow of traffic by having like any ghost like sensing tools, like no ghost hunting like rods, no like those things that it like shoots like radio things when it's supposed to like make sentences. So we were like, oh shit, like let me empty my ghost hunting stuff from my purse that I always carry with me. But yeah, Shawshank Redemption, like the first 2 levels of the prison were like all still remodeled from the movie, so you could like see the like movie history of it all. And then as you got up into the like prison, then it became like the like dilapidated area that like had not been touched or like renovated at all. And that's when they had kind of different rooms that I think were dedicated to like ghost hunting stuff. And then you like got to walk around the prison cell block too, which was just like I'm not even like really that afraid of heights, and it was like unnerving. It was like such close quarters, and it was so like stacked up on top of each other. But yeah, so Shawshank Redemption, Stephen King apparently either wrote the script script for the movie, or I think wrote the story that it was inspired about. I'm not sure. And then we saw Pet Sematary too, but I don't think I liked that one very much. Do you like Pet Sematary? What is it? It's like they, like, all the pets come back to life, but like anything that you bury in that area comes back. So it's like zombies too or something.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a while since I've seen it, so
I don't
really
remember
all the
liking it
details.
very much.
I remember liking it. I just don't really remember much beyond that.
Yeah. And then The Shining. We've never watched it together, but I really like The Shining. I feel like Jack Nicholson is like insane, but he was good for that role. He's a great actor, and he like really put his all into that one. All right, any last thoughts on horror movies, vampires, or Salem's Lot?
Not that I can think of.
Okay, well, let's jump into our remake ideas then. What were things that you would have remade in this film?
I think we talked a lot about them. I would have loved a little bit more backstory on both the town and the characters. I know there's like a time limit, but if we could have found a way to incorporate that, I think it would have really improved the story. I don't know. Besides that, I really liked the like actual vampires themselves.
Did you like the vampire that he actually looked like was very like Nosferatu traditional vampire. And he looks like in What We Do in the Shadows. Like, what's the guy called? He's like the like it's like the main plot line in season 1. He's not like the count.
No, not
the
count.
Baron. The Baron. And so he looks like the Baron. That kind of vampire design.
And I liked what happened to like everyone that ended up turning.
The glowing contact
yes.
eyes.
But yeah, more context.
Yeah, more context. Was Straker giving like possibly gay icon vibes to you? Like, you know, because to me, I feel like
my gaydar was not going on.
My gaydar was kind of
really?
it was blinking a little bit. I feel like he was like.
Was it because he was like obsessed with his master, or was it because he was so fashionable?
Yeah, they kept talking about how well dressed
he was. Giving a little bit of like desperation.
Yeah. Like, how long have they been
just
together?
A polished British man.
I don't know.
I wasn't getting gay.
Maybe I conflate British and gay. maybe it was my British star that should have been going on. But I don't know, like, well-dressed in the 70s, a well-dressed man that lives alone of a certain age, and he lives with a man. I think there may have been a romantic connection there. And like, so they call them like familiars in What We Do in the Shadows. Like, would he be considered a familiar, or? Because I feel like there's sometimes like a romantic like connotation there. Maybe I'm just thinking too much of What We Do in the Shadows.
I definitely think he had no romantic.
Where everyone in What We Do in the Shadows is at minimum bisexual. So maybe I'm thinking of Guillermo, but I don't know.
It could be, certainly.
Maybe. Okay, well, my remake. So instead of Salem's Lot, what if we just went full send and did Salem's Parking Lot? So it's actually like the harrowing journey of trying to find an empty parking space in town.
I think it's very fitting, especially with the drive-in.
Yeah, there's a lot of driving that happens in this movie, but also, you know me, parking is one of my biggest fears. So like,
a living nightmare.
And if I don't know the parking situation, you know, there's a high likelihood that I'm not coming.
That's why I drive to places and you drive back.
Yeah. It's like, you get us there, you situate us, and I'll get us home.
It works because then I can drink. Yeah,
then you can drink, and I can not cry trying to find parking. But yeah, so I think just Salem's Parking Lot, and we just, you know, drive around and around in circles. We have some like horror music playing in the background. And it's like you know, a vampire can only go out at night, and like that's when traffic is busiest, is when people are out on the town. So this poor vampire who just can't find any parking anywhere. So that's an option. And then, like you said, a lot of this movie focuses on the drive-in theater. So if we were to do a more, you know, modern remake idea of this, to set it in 2024 instead of back in the 70s again, what if instead of the main action happening in a drive-in theater, it happens like in an AMC? And like, you might not know this reference, but Nicole Kidman would be the main vampire lady. And that's because Nicole Kidman did like an AMC ad that was like iconic, and like everyone just like really loved that she did it. So I think we just reimagined the whole thing. Instead of a drive-in theater, we're in an AMC. Like, we get the full-size popcorn. The vampires are, you know, they're kind of just like hidden in like the reclined seats at night. So that's like their little coffin.
I'm getting mental imagery of like Halloween Town, where they're like,
like Calabar has them in there. They're tucked in. They got their full-size popcorn. That's where all the vampires are. We just like shut the door real quick. But instead of like Barlow being the main guy, I think it is Nicole Kidman. Nicole Kidman also gives like possibly undead vibes as well. She doesn't seem to age very much. She's very pale too. So she could already be a vampire. And then I think that we like really lean into the more campy aspects of the film. And I think they should have made crosses with just like even like increasingly funnier and random objects. So we have like, you know, the tongue depressors. What else could we have? Like, the doctor reaches into her bag and pulls out like 2 dildos and like crosses them instead, tapes them up. But what do you think?
It could be like a scary movie parody or something.
Yeah. What would that be? Oh yeah, like if they did a scary movie parody, they'd have like increasingly funnier. Can you think of any objects?
No. anything stick like.
I know, like they grab like 2 chihuahuas, duct tape them together. Like I just want to see them like
the squirrels where they get like their tails stuck to each other.
Yeah, like they're like they fight and they get enmeshed in a perfect like crucifix. So yeah, that was all the remake ideas that I had. Megan, what have you been watching recently? Watching or reading?
Oh my gosh, whatever you are.
Yeah, let me go through my. We've been watching.
I don't own a television.
So. Yeah, I mean, you could be watching. You have your phone at the gym.
Well, I haven't been going to the gym.
Do you have a new gym show that you've been watching?
No, I had started very briefly rewatching A Discovery of Witches, and then I got you on board with that.
Yeah.
And so that's now our show.
Yeah.
So I have none of my own at this point.
Okay.
I do want to watch that new Disney Plus one. What is it called? It's got Agatha in it.
Oh, I think it's called Agatha.
Oh, that would make sense.
I don't know, but I think that's like a play off of
something to do with like Wanda, whatever.
Yeah, the WandaVision. We never watched WandaVision. No, we watched an episode of it. I love that actress though. So yeah, maybe. We saw Longlegs together with Michaela, who I did not realize that it was Nick Cage for literally at all. I didn't realize. So they did great prosthetics on him, which makes sense because Nick Cage like loves to be like crazy in a lot of his movies, and the performance was like absolutely wild. So now reflecting back, I'm like, oh yeah, that seems like something that Nick Cage would do. But we didn't really like that one either. It had like a strong, we watched it with Michaela, it had a strong, like a strong 50% of the way into the movie. It was like, okay, like there was some
it was very slow
mystery and intrigue, but then like the climax was just like dumb, and like it didn't really like pay off in any sort of interesting way. And I don't know, I think that there's a lot of hype about it, like when it came out in theaters a couple months ago, but I just didn't see the hype. But yeah, we've been watching Longlegs, and
we saw the second Beetlejuice, which I guess we could talk about with that other episode, but that was really good.
Yeah, you really liked it, right? And you're like a Beetlejuice #1 like super fan, not super fan, but you really like Beetlejuice.
I love Beetlejuice. It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
I said that, like, I'm just not really, like, a Tim Burton kind of girl, but I still like it. I think that the sequel did a really good job, too, of, like, I feel like it definitely, like, played off of, like, the classic things that people that love the first film were looking for, but still had, like, enough, like, new and interesting, like, plot lines. And I love, like, Catherine O'Hara and Winona Ryder, too. But yeah, we saw Beetlejuice in theaters. We've just done a lot of horror, which I feel like we always do, like September, October. Oh, yes, we have watched 2 things, which I need to put on Letterboxd. We watched Barbie.
Oh, yeah, we did. For your birthday.
For my birthday.
Actually, and for not your birthday.
Just for, like, that was for my parents' birthday, and then you got the leftovers. But let me put that on my Letterboxd right now because those deserve 5 out of 5 stars. We watched... I'm basically forcing Megan to go in order here. You haven't seen the first Barbie movie, which is Barbie Nutcracker, but for my 25th birthday last year, we watched Barbie Rapunzel, which you said you liked enough. And then we watched Barbie Swan Lake, and then we watched Barbie Princess and the Pauper. So we're going kind of in order here, but Swan Lake, good. Princess and the Pauper, I like more than Swan Lake. What did you think?
I think...
the silence.
I mean, I can't judge Princess and the Pauper because I didn't see the whole film.
You saw only like the last hour out of an hour and a half.
I liked Swan Lake better than the Rapunzel one.
Really?
Yeah.
How come? Correctly. Here, you have one critical complaint of Swan Lake, though. Go ahead and say it.
Oh my God. The little... What are they, elves?
Yeah, so they
look exactly like children, and they're like a little bit...
They sexualize them a little bit,
which is a little odd. I feel like it's one of those things when you're a kid watching it, you don't pick up on that.
Yeah.
Being weird.
So...
And I never saw it as a kid, so this is like my first time seeing these movies. So I don't have like the nostalgia aspect of it where I think you do. And yeah, I just remember seeing that part and I was like, oh.
Yeah, so they always have, so like, so it's Barbie and then her little sister, Kelly. And so Kelly and like the little kids often feature in the movies. And so in Barbie Nutcracker, they appear as like little fairies and they're like chunkier little kids. But in this one, they had them be elves. But like Megan said, like one of the elves was dressed as like a French, like in like a French maid's outfit, and she was like a skunk, and the skunk
she like shakes her ass.
The skunk like kind of had it
flirts.
Yeah, she kind of had it going on with like the porcupine, and there was some like not sexual innuendo, but like the suggestion of sexual innuendo. Like they didn't fully go there. But it was weird because they just looked identical to all the kids
It was weird enough that, like, before they changed into their elf forms and they were still animals, I was just, like, fine watching it. And then I was, like, shook. I was like, oh, that is not what I imagined they looked like.
Yeah, they didn't do,
look like
they're just kids. Like, they didn't do any, like, character
and then
development.
in the other movies that you've shown me, the kids look exactly
like the kids
That's what
exactly
the kids look
same. Like. Yeah, so they didn't, like, make the elves, like, any bit distinguishable from any of the other kid characters. But, yeah, so Barbie Rapunzel remains a banger for me still. Swan Lake, below that. And then Princess and the Pauper, I think, on par with Barbie Rapunzel. Princess and the Pauper is a musical, which I did not remember, but makes sense because, like, the very famous song from that is like, I'm just like you, you're just like me, we take responsibility. So it makes sense. It's a musical, but I feel like Preminger as the villain is like, he's giving gay icon for sure. Like, can you say that character was very much like gay coded?
I don't know.
He for sure was.
I think more so than Stryker.
Oh yeah. Stryker, that's just like me putting my own biases on it. But no, Preminger is like, the internet will agree as well. They have cast him as like a gay icon villain. But I think
again, like, I didn't see the first half.
Yeah.
So.
There's like studies that actually Disney, I don't think Barbie is a part of Disney franchise. I think they're like Mattel may have their own like franchise for film production, but Disney actually, like, unfortunately often makes their villains like gay coded, which is kind of bad, right? Because you're saying that, like, to be gay is to be like villainized. Like, they give their villains like gay like features and mannerisms and stuff like that. There's like a lot of like think pieces and like studies on that, but yeah, I think that Preminger is great. Honestly, I love him as a villain, and I thought Barbie Princess and the Pauper was like really good. I do love, it's like Princess and the Pauper is all about like class dynamics, and I like how they're like, we need to make sure that the Pauper's cat looks poor as shit. So they have like the princess's cat is like white and fluffy, and then they make the Pauper's cat look like this like mangy like street cat, and I'm like, oh my god.
I like how they also make it act like a dog.
Yeah.
It's like cats are not for the poor, so we can't.
Yeah, they were like, we need him to potentially have rabies. They make him bark. But yeah, I thought that one was really good. So yeah, we've been watching that, and then I started reading the Throne of Glass series, which is also by Sarah J. Maas, who does the ACOTAR series, which I really loved. And I've been listening to the Hunger Games audiobooks. So I've just been crying like every 10 minutes, but I'm just welling up with tears. But honestly, they did like so far such a faithful adaptation of those movies, like astonishingly like faithful adaptations. Like they did an excellent job. So I'm curious to see if as I listen more, if they'll diverge a little bit in how faithful. But the first book, at least, and so far up until where I'm at in the second book, they did like word for word, same lines, like same exact structure, only omitting like a couple things. So good movies. All right. Well, anything else you wanted to mention?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, let us know in the comments if you're a vampire. And if you are, if there are any skincare tips that we can pick up other than sucking people's blood. But you've never had the blood transfusion, even though you could have.
Mm-mm.
So maybe if it gets to that.
I'll be honest, my skin was never better.
Your skin was really good when you were anemic. I think that actually might, because isn't the lore that vampires themselves don't have any blood in them? That's why they're so pale and everything. They like drink people's blood instead. We actually, folks, we might have solved it. I think that they look so youthful because I think blood just makes you have more pimples. So when you were hospitalized for your anemia,
my skin was great.
Your skin was great. That was a perk. All right. Bye.